yes, there is this kind of disorderliness that's taking place globally, whether it's the environment, whether it's politics. There has to be something new that has to replace it. So as certain things begin to break down, we have to make a choice to how to create order. And we can't respond to those conditions with anger. We can't respond to those conditions with hatred or fear, because that's the very consciousness that's driving it in the first place. The first part in truly creating a new personal reality is overcoming your present personality. You got to get beyond the normal thinking patterns, the normal urges of action and habits, to get beyond certain emotions that are residuals from the day before. That's the work right there. That's the part you have to overcome. So I'm hopeful that everything that we're doing, in the world, so it's giving them tools to begin to apply to their lives. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people that have healed themselves from all kinds of health conditions, healing from leukemia or stage 4 cancer.
So grateful to Dr. Joe. He came into my life, at a really critical time.
I'm telling you that I am more mystified, I'm more surprised lately than I can't believe what we're witnessing. I'm humbled. Don't even ask me how it's happening. Every event, we're just going, wow, let's sit down here and just think about what we're doing. It's amazing. I think the challenge is that people have to wake up. And the question is, how uncomfortable do you have to become before you make up your mind to change something?
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is my friend Dr. Joe Dispenza is back on London Real for the 4th time, and there's so many things I love about Joe, but one of my favorite is something we talked about on the episode, and that's about being grateful for your future. And instead of worrying about all the things you want to accomplish and all the goals that you think you can achieve, it's just to be grateful for all the wonderful things that are going to happen in your life in the future. And once that's set in your head, be in the present moment. Joe calls it the generous present moment. And the truth is that whatever we pay attention to is what we put most of our energy in. And if we're always worried about the past or the future, we can't be present and be our best selves right now. And Joe was also super helpful on this episode because I talked to him about trauma I had when I was 7 years old when my parents got divorced, and I was leaving the next day to go to San Diego to speak to both of my parents about it. And Joe had some really good advice as far as understanding, forgiving, and trying to have empathy for other people in your life that might have caused you some trauma that maybe didn't really have anything to do with you, but had more to do with them and living their life. So I know you're gonna enjoy this episode with Joe. He always drops some incredible knowledge. I think Joe was on fire for this episode. He's on point for the entire thing, so sit back and enjoy this incredible episode. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Joe Dispenza, the New York Times bestselling author, international lecturer, researcher, and educator. Your work focuses on the intersection of neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics, driven by the conviction that each one of us has the potential for greatness. You specialize in teaching people to rewire their brains and recondition their bodies to make lasting changes. Dr. Joe, welcome back to London Real.
Thanks so much, Brian. I'm always happy to be with you.
Always great to have you here. You know, you move a lot. I mean, we were just talking. I mean, you just listed off about 20 cities that you're in. You're going to Russia, Italy, Rome, America. You know, tell me about your schedule. You're a busy guy.
Well, you know, from the very beginning, my theory is I'll always go where I'm being invited. So if you stop inviting me, it's time for me to do something else. But you know, I think this is a time in history where people are really wanting to know how to do it. So we're seeing great changes in the measurements that we've done, brain scans, HRV measurements, epigenetic changes, immune regulation, telomere lengths, we're seeing great changes in the biology of people's brains and bodies. And the evidence shows us that it's actually possible to do it. And at the same time, we're seeing a lot of great testimony, people telling their stories of healing from leukemia or stage 4 cancer, tumors disappearing, or Parkinson's disease going into remission. We're seeing the evidence in testimony. And I think evidence is the loudest voice right now. And so I think many people are interested in understanding how to do it. So my schedule has gotten super busy because people want to know how. And so we're just responding to people's needs. And just culturally speaking, whether we're in Moscow or whether we're in Rome or whether we're in Mexico City or the United States or London, we just move around a lot because we do these events that teach people how to do it.
When I turn on the news, I see a bunch of people fighting with each other, and I see Brexit here in the UK, knife crime up. I look in the US and there's the election cycle, there's shootings, and yet on the other side, there's more people than ever are feeling your message and thinking, wait a second, we can empower ourselves. How do you sort those two out in your head?
Yeah, I think that when you start seeing this kind of global chaos that's going on, chaos to me is unpredictable order. There's a novelty in chaos because the newness of information that's being created takes us out of the familiar and out of the known. And that's a good sign because the side effect of that is the current systems begin to break down. And so, yes, there is this kind of disorderliness that's taking place globally, whether it's the environment, whether it's politics, whether it's economics, whether it's religion, education, journalism, the medical model, it's all kind of coming apart. And there has to be something new that has to replace it. So as certain things begin to break down, we have to make a choice to how to create order out of that disorder. And we can't respond to those conditions with anger. We can't respond to those conditions with hatred or fear, because that's the very consciousness that's driving it in the first place. So we're seeing this kind of extreme reality where there's a polarization between both worlds. And I think it's healthy. And so the optimism that I have is that if you teach people then how to be able to become more self-dependent and teach them that they have the resources to heal their body or to create opportunities in their lives, they can begin to take the energy of that disorderliness, and by creating more coherence and brain coherence and heart coherence in the midst of when everything else is collapsing, I think then you'll begin to see changes that people will begin to execute and create something greater. So I'm hopeful that everything that we're doing, in the world is giving people the tools. It's giving them tools to begin to apply to their lives. So the only way that change is going to take place is if you see the evidence of the collapse right in front of you. I think the challenge is that people have to wake up. And the question is, how uncomfortable do you have to become before you make up your mind to change something? And I'm not just talking about individuals. I'm talking about the living organism of the species of human beings. And so with information comes knowledge. And when you learn new information, you become aware of what you were unaware of. And awareness is consciousness, and consciousness is commingled with a change in energy. So there's this kind of energetic change going on in the planet, and we have to learn how to use that energy and to harness it and reorganize it. In fact, I believe that that energy is endorsing who you're being. So then, whatever your belief is, whether you're believing it's the end of the Mayan calendar and the beginning of a new house, or there's some changes going on in the solar flares, or whatever your belief is, that energy that's taking place right now can be used to endorse. If you're fearful, you're going to experience more fear or more anxiety. If you're using that energy and learning how to create order out of it, it's going to endorse some greater outcome for you, whether it's health or wealth or whatever you're after in your life. So the polarity or the extremity that's being created, I think, is necessary for something greater to happen. And as I've said in the past, you don't try to fix this. We just figure out a way to create something better. And when you create something better, everybody leaves this and naturally goes here. It's just antiquated. So we just got to get really sharp and see through the illusion of what's taking place. And I just don't want to wait till it gets so uncomfortable that it's too late to begin to act. And that's kind of what drives me more than anything else.
Well, because I see a lot of anger out there, and maybe, I don't know how much is real, because you see it on the news and see it on social media and the wars and the tweets and stuff. And sometimes I don't know if that's what's real on the ground or not, but that's not what you're going for. You're trying to get people to create a new reality by not reacting to that anger.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I'm not sure I believe anything that I see on television any longer. I'm just not sure that it's actually factual. And I travel around the world, and whatever place or country or city that I'm in, there's a general sense of goodness with people. I think people are wired to care for one another, to take care of one another, to inform one another, to support one another, to heal one another. To give to one another. I think we're wired that way. And I think that if you want to diminish that kind of virtuistic behavior, you create the stress hormones, and you create fear, you create hostility, you create anger, you create pain, you create suffering. And it's those emotions that begin to create separation. Now I don't trust you any longer, because in survival, you have to take care of yourself. In survival, it becomes very selfish set of chemicals that cause to endorse our ego, So I think that in this current time, we have to be able to rise above those emotional states. And when you do, you're no longer controlled. I think the best way to control people is to control their emotions. And when you can control their emotions, of course, you're going to keep their attention moving from one thing to the next. And while everybody's looking at all of this drama, something else is going on over here, and I'm more interested in looking at that. And so I don't really look at journalism the same way. I don't look at the media the same way, because I don't necessarily believe that I'm getting the whole story. So people are angry about that. And I think the anger is good when it's seen as an energy of disturbance, but that should motivate us to act or to do something about it. And it's that whole analogy of the frog in the boiling water. You you get desensitized, you get more desensitized, you get more desensitized, and at what point do you start burning? At what point do you start realizing it's getting a little too hot? I just think we have to get to that point now. So by creating something for people to utilize, that you're not relying on so many things outside of you to bring you joy, or this kind of subconscious program of being a victim. You say, Brian, why are you so upset today? Well, I'm upset because of this person or this thing. What that really means is that some person or some condition in your environment is controlling the way you're feeling and the way you're thinking. Well, if something is outside of you is controlling the way you feel and the way you think, you're a victim to your environment. And so then there is this dramatic polarity that goes on. When things are going well, you're happy. When things aren't going well, you're sad. But when you learn how to self-regulate and create more coherence in your brain and heart, and that's what our message is, then you're no longer dependent on your outer world controlling your mood. In fact, you begin to realize how you think and feel begins to produce effects in your outer life. Now you start believing more you're the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life. Now that isn't something that you take one bite of and swallow and it's all over. It's a process of repatterning. It's a process of rewiring. It's a process of reconditioning. It's a process of self-reflection and awareness and changing those beliefs. And that's the work. And yet people are doing it. So when you begin to realize then, well, I can't respond to the same conditions in my life with the same emotions and the same thoughts, because if I believe that the way I feel and the way I think creates reality, if I'm reacting to the same thoughts and feelings equal to the conditions in my life in the same way, then I keep reaffirming the same life. So then a person has to retreat from their life, retreat from their environment, disconnect from their outer world, and begin to lay down patterns neurologically in their brain so that their brain is no longer a record of the past. They're priming their brain and beginning to lay down the circuitry for them to think in different ways, to begin to close their eyes and rehearse who they're going to be in that day. And the act of mentally rehearsing begins to install the neurological hardware in their brain. So their brain looks like the experience is already happening or has already happened. Now the brain's no longer a record of the past. Now we're creating a map to the future. Now
it's practicing gratitude before it happens.
Well, now the emotion.
Right.
Now, so then the action of rehearsal and installing the neurological hardware, by firing and wiring the same circuitry, the hardware becomes a software program, which means you're going to start automatically acting like a different person. You're going to start automatically thinking in new ways. And then to trade guilt or anxiety or aggression or hatred or anger, to say those are emotions of the past, and as long as I live by these emotions, those emotions are influencing my thoughts. If emotions are a record of the past, then I'm thinking in the past, so my past is going to be my future. So if I want to be wealthy, I can't bring lack. If I want to be happy, I can't bring pain. Well, so then let's get beyond the emotion. So by trading those limited survival emotions and teaching people how to elevate their emotional state and really measure to tell them you're doing it or you're not doing it. When you teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like, and you say, I'm not going to get up until I feel this feeling and I'm locked into that feeling. Well, the side effect of that is, let's just say that you can contact the emotions of your future and you teach your body what it feels like emotionally. The joy, the gratitude, the appreciation, the love for life, the joy for existence, the inspiration. And most people do that in the beginning. They feel kind of funny, like, why am I doing this? Because they've been hypnotized and conditioned to need a reason to feel that. Right. Something outside of them has got to change how they feel inside of them. So they spend their whole life in lack and emptiness waiting for it to happen. But living in lack isn't going to create it.
So you're front loading it, and that feels weird at first.
At first. But if you start understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it, and the stronger the emotion you feel, the more you're going to pay attention to the picture in your mind. You begin to remember your future. You are branding that circuitry in your brain, and now you're emotionally conditioning your body into the future. Now, here's the side effect of that. If you can do that properly and become familiar with those states of mind and body, and you get up feeling like your future has already happened, I guarantee you're going to stop looking for it. I guarantee you're going to stop analyzing why it hasn't happened. You're going to feel like it has already happened. Now, the work is to be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. You got to be able to sustain that state independent of your coworkers, independent of your boss, independent of your ex, independent of your finances, independent of the traffic. And if you're able to do that, you will begin to see the feedback in your life. In a sense, when energy makes it to the heart, it begins to broaden a field around the body, an energy that's literally measurable, a magnetic field. And that energy is a frequency, and that frequency can carry the thought of your health, of your wealth, of your freedom, of your new relationship, of your new job. The frequency or the emotion of suffering can't carry the thought of health. It can't carry the thought of your new future. So then when there's a vibrational match between the energy, because we're always emitting energy and information, when there's a vibrational match between your energy and some possibility that exists in the quantum field, something magical happens, because once energy makes it to your heart, you're creating from the field instead of from matter. Now this weird thing starts to happen and things start coming to you. Now you don't have to rush anywhere to get it. You're not creating a matter to matter from three-dimensional reality to three-dimensional reality. That takes time. You're creating from the field, and it's the field that creates matter. So all of a sudden you start seeing things coming to you. When you see that, and you start to see that they're coming in unusual ways that surprise you, you're going to begin to wake up to the fact that you're probably more the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life. So teaching people how to do that and then be able to become studious, to become the scientists in their life, to measure the effects of them at cause. whatever's going on in the news, whatever's going on in the media, whatever's going on, it's incidental to the fact that now they're beginning to make great strides. So when people come, for all kinds of reasons to our work, they come to get healthy, they come to get wealthy, they come to have a relationship, they come for a mystical experience. But I now know they really come for wholeness. And when you feel so whole because your brain is so orderly and so coherent, and you've trained your heart to be more in coherence, and you feel that kind of joy for no reason at all. This is where it gets interesting, because now all of a sudden you're no longer seduced by the conditions in your outer world. In fact, you're seeing the hidden meaning behind everything because you're viewing it from a greater level of consciousness. Right. So sitting in the fire of your guilt, sitting in the fire of your pain, and knowing what to do when that happens, and teaching people that as they begin to lower the volume to those emotions, as they begin to self-regulate, that's the greatest challenge they have in their lives. I mean, people say to me, what do you do in the morning? Well, 2 hours in the morning, that's a lot of time. Well, if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, the rest of my day is easy.
And
right?
That's what you do. You spend 2 hours in the morning.
I allow for 2 hours.
Okay. You still get up at 4 a.m. and that.
Well, this morning I was up at 3.
Okay.
Because I'm on the wrong time zone.
Right.
But if I'm up,
you like the 4 a.m. slot
because my brain waves are just right. I don't have to work as hard. Yeah, my body's a little fatigued, but I'm between worlds, and so my body's a little tired, but I get up and do it. And to me, I allow for 2 hours. Sometimes I can nail it in 45 minutes or an hour, and sure, I'm done. Other times, I'm on the wrong time zone. I have meetings all day long. I got a lot going on, and I'm just not going to fall prey to that common state of thinking.
And that looks like meditation, affirmations in your mind, visualization.
It's the work that we do. It's the work that we do. And the first part in truly creating a new personal reality is overcoming your present personality. You got to get beyond the normal thinking patterns, the normal urges of action and habits, to get beyond certain emotions that are residuals from the day before. That's the work right there. That's the part you have to overcome. So some days you just kind of slip in and it's magic because you've been practicing, like having a great golf game or a great tennis game or a great run or a great session of knitting. You're in your groove. Other days you got to work a little bit more for it. And for me, what I've learned is those hard days, the days that are the most challenging, are always the most rewarding. Because now you're uncompromising to an outcome. And if it takes you an hour to get beyond yourself, to find the present moment, because that's the only place where the unknown exists, the familiar emotions and hardwired patterns of the past are the known. The predictable future, in trying to forecast the feeling of every event in our life, what people do unconsciously, is also the known. There's only one place where the unknown exists, and that's the present moment.
You call it the generous present moment.
Yeah, and I've just done it enough times, and there are plenty of people in our work that have done it enough times to know when you're there and when you're not.
Okay.
And when you're not, it's very obvious because you've been there enough times. So
you're separating your old story from yourself, and you're separating your focus on the future, and you're being present.
It's just like hitting a tennis ball in a sweet spot. Okay. You lock into something, and that wholeness starts to happen, and now you're no longer creating from polarity or duality or opposites. People they create when they see they don't have something. Whether, hey, nice suit, I want one of those, right? And the moment I see that you have a nice suit and I start thinking, I want one of those, my brain naturally starts putting me in the equation. Next thing you know, I'm wearing your suit. Well, that's because we're wired to do that. So then we have this natural ability to create. The problem is after you imagine that, you open your eyes and you don't have it, people experience more lack. Well, we're not that good yet. So then the act of practicing enough times and beginning to create the state in which you're so connected to the energy of your future. Now think about this. You're so connected to the energy of your future, you're no longer looking for it or waiting for it. You feel like it's already happened. The moment you get upset in traffic, the moment you start judging a coworker, you just disconnected from the energy of your future, And now you're back to the energy of your past. Now, if you tell me it was that person that did it to you, I'd say to you, oh, you're back to the unconscious program of being a victim again. So then the person then goes, oh, when did I fall from, that state? When did I lose it? Oh, it happened at 3 o'clock today. The next time that happens, what can I do differently? Now the person's moving through their challenges in their life with coherence, with rhythm. They're starting to begin to make strides, and that they're no longer knee-jerking to the people in their life that they've used emotionally to reaffirm their identity. Now, this is the work because you look around to see if anybody's doing it, and you don't see anybody else doing it. It's kind of this kind of lonely moment where you're realizing that I'm the only one doing this. That's that kind of moment that you realize that nobody understands you but you, right? And you can't even ask your friends for their opinion because they're going to give you their opinion based on their own experiences. And it's that kind of moment where you have to draw in all your resources and begin to make up your mind. And I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people that have healed themselves from all kinds of health conditions. And one of the most important elements that I see over and over again is when the person said, I just got to this point in my life where I made up my mind. And they made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body to the past. And their body responded to their mind in that instant. And the stronger the emotion or the stronger the intensity of that energy, the stronger they felt that energy, they came out of the resting state, the more they paid attention to the choice they were making.
Right. So like the decision might be, I'm not going to let my ex-wife bother me anymore. I'm going to no longer get angry.
Yeah, we had a woman on the stage in our event just recently, 78-year-old woman, very serious car accident, in a wheelchair, couldn't walk, couldn't speak. Made up her mind, like, this is it. I am here to change. It wasn't like 50% in, I hope this works. She was like, I made up my mind. And the decision became a moment in time that she never forgot. She will say to you, I know the moment I made up my mind. I know the moment I decided to change. Think about it. That is the moment she moved her brain and body from the past present reality into a future present reality. What do I mean by that? People wake up in the morning and they don't feel anything, and all of a sudden, their brain is a record of the past. They start thinking about all their problems, and those problems are memories of certain people and objects and things at certain times and places. So the moment they start remembering their problems, they're thinking in the past. Well, every one of those problems has an emotion associated with it. So they start feeling unhappy, they start feeling discouraged, they start feeling victimized. Now their body's in the past. And if how you think and how you feel creates your state of being, that person's starting their day with their entire state of being in the past. So if they're living in the familiar past and they're in the known, they're going to create the predictable future. So they're going to run through a series of routine behaviors in their day, and they're going to want to know the feeling of every experience in their life. Well, if you can predict the feeling of every experience in your life, that's more of the known. So now, the person who's now living in that future known reality, how are they going to change? Well, the moment you make a decision and you come out of your resting state and you begin to say, I don't care what's going on in my life, environment. I don't care what people think, environment. I don't care how I feel, body. I don't care how long it takes, time. I'm going to do this. And the hair on the back of your neck stands up. That's a new electrochemical signal to the body. This is the body saying, he's serious this time. It's like jumping on a horse and wrapping your legs around and giving it a kick. The body's like, ooh, we're going to ride now. It's no longer, oh, geez, I think I'm going to change tomorrow. Right. This is a strong signal, and that becomes a long-term memory. That moment defines the person. So then the stronger the emotion, if the emotion of inspiration is greater than the emotion of suffering from the past experience, the stronger the emotion they feel, the more they pay attention to the picture in their mind. We could say they're remembering their future, and they're beginning to brand that circuitry in their brain and send a new emotional signature to their body. And in a sense, they're creating a coherent, clear intention with an elevated, coherent heart emotion, and now they're broadcasting a whole new signature, and that's dropping a big stone in a very placid lake, and here come the waves. That's moving right out into reality, and the person is beginning to change their energy, and nobody changes until they change their energy, and when they change their energy, they change their life. And what's the cool part? The cool part is you start seeing the breadcrumbs coming from the universe. You start saying, keep going, Brian. You're starting to see these synchronicities and these coincidences and these opportunities. And people say, I'm not doing anything. Well, of course you're not doing anything like in the same way you've done everything. You're changing your energy, and now it could be that simple in the present moment. You start seeing feedback coming into your world. I think that's what people want. And you could have a master's or a doctorate degree, you could have a high school education, you could be overweight, you could be underweight, you could be sick, you could be healthy, you could be young, you could be old. Any skin color, I've seen it on all different people, all different races, all different size, all different shapes, all different diets. Nobody is so special to be excluded from that phenomenon.
And they change their vision of the future. So if it was me, as opposed to all these things I'm hoping that are going to happen in my life, I just know they're already true. And then I just am in the present.
Well, it takes a little bit of training. I mean, knowledge is the forerunner to experience. So I now know that if you give people the right information, and as I've said in the past on your show, science is that language. And you can combine the quantum model and neuroscientific model with neuroplasticity and neuroendocrinology and psychoneuroimmunology and epigenetics and electromagnetism and all those wonderful different branches of science and build a new model of understanding. The person has to be able to explain that model. If they can't explain it, Brian, it's not wired in their brain. So they can't assign meaning to what they're doing. They leave it up to conjecture. They leave it up to hope. They leave it up to wishing, praying, wanting. That's the old model. But when they understand what they're doing and why, and they can articulate it, they're installing the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for the experience, so they'll understand how to do it better.
And that's why a lot of your events, you're up on the whiteboard with like all the science.
Of course.
Because you're trying to get their logic brain to understand the science.
And make it so simple,
right,
that it's not about making it complicated. What it's about is eliminating everything else that's not part of the formula. So stop wondering why it hasn't happened. Stop analyzing and judging yourself. Stop saying, I can't, it's too hard. Those are the very things that are standing in the way between you and your future. So you come up against yourself. Well, what do most people do when they come up against themselves at home in their meditation? They say, I can't meditate. They get up, they get on their cell phone, they quit. Yeah. They get up, they turn the TV on, they get up, they do whatever, have a cup of coffee, whatever. They haven't gone past that point because they don't understand that they should. So then when you begin to create a model of understanding and the person can explain it, they're wiring it in their brain. Now, as they install the neurological hardware in their brain, they're priming their brain for the experience. So then you give them the instruction and they can understand what they're doing and why, and you set up the conditions in their environment where they feel safe enough to create. Now we take them to the next level. And the experience then begins to change their brain. It begins to change their body. It begins to downregulate certain genes, upregulate other genes. And you may have a good meditation. You may not have one that's so great. But if I said to you, now, Brian, what did you do really well in that last meditation that you love about yourself? Explain that to me. And you can articulate what you did really well. I guarantee you, when it comes time to do it again, you'll do it again. Then if I said to you, if you had another opportunity to do it again, what would you do differently? What would you bring? What would you improve on? What would you work on? And if you can articulate that, I guarantee you, you're going to become conscious of those unconscious things that you were once unconscious of, and now you're going to go a little further. And when you stretch a person a little further past that point where they normally stop, that unknown, that's where the magic happens. So in the beginning, you step out into the unknown, it feels uncomfortable. But if you keep applying what you're learning, we've seen this over and over again and for years now. the person gets beyond themselves. There's this kind of dramatic shift that takes place in a collective of 1,000 people or 1,500 people. Now the energy in the room's changing. Now people are getting it. They're creating more coherence. They're starting to break through. And now give them the opportunity to demonstrate how powerful they really are, and you will be surprised on what you see. And it comes in any shape, any age, any sickness. I mean, you can't tell me you're too sick to do this work any longer. You can't tell me you're too old to do this work.
When is the documentary coming? That's what I want to know, Joe. When can we see and pull back the curtain?
Wow. Well, one of the things that I'm so proud of is we now have a testimonial booth at our week-long events, because people have so many amazing, great stories. I mean, they're so good that now we have so much testimony that a lot of people are going to our website and just watching the stories of people tell their stories of how they healed of all these health conditions and the doctors told them they weren't going to make it, or they created wealth or whatever. I think that's so important, because when you see that person on the stage and they're telling their story and it's not a Hollywood version of triumph, they lost everything, they got worse, everybody gave up on them, they were in and out of the hospital, they tried this, they tried that, and all of a sudden they start telling their story, and you see how they started to make the changes, and they started feeling better, and their blood values started to improve a little bit, and their blood values got worse, and then they went back again, and then they come out the other side. And it's a 64-year-old woman, with Parkinson's disease, that can't swallow, that can't blink her eyes, that can't chew, that can't stand up, can't blow her nose. And in one incident, she's telling the story of how she's standing up in front of the audience, how she can blow her nose, chew, swallow, blink, all that stuff. You're looking at her going, wow, she doesn't look much different than me, or doesn't look very special, or she looks like a normal person. You're going to identify. And I look out in the audience when people stand on the stage and tell their story, and there's a lot of tears because they're speaking truth. They're the example of truth. They're possibility right in front of them. And that shift that takes place in that moment in the event is dramatic.
And it's because they see someone else do it, or they feel them do it, and that has a cascade effect on everyone else.
Look, I was in Cancun. We had our week-long event in Cancun. There's a colleague of mine who's a PhD, MD researcher out of UC San Diego. Brilliant man. Came very doubtful. By that third day, when people were standing on the stage, he sat down with me at breakfast and he said, it's time to do research. We're going to get funding from the NIH. We're going to work, and we're going to demystify this process. I've seen it. I now know it. Let's do protein markers. Let's do brain scans. Let's build this model. Let's write the protocol. Now, why? Because we have a perfect Petri dish. We have 1,000 people in Cancun, all eating at the same time, all waking up at the same time. There's a pattern. There's a closed environment, right? So you study the environment. You study what's taking place. And filling in those markers, getting a little bit more evidence to tell the story, both scientifically, as I said at the beginning, as well as testimony. That evidence becomes the loudest voice, because we're seeing, oh my God, there are epigenetic changes. Oh my God, there's immune regulation. Oh, there's protein markers that are having the changes in neurotransmitters. There's electromagnetic changes. There's more heart coherence. There's more brain coherence. Yeah, and look, there's a person with stage 4 cancer telling her story right in front of the audience that had serious cancer all throughout her body. There's nothing there now. Nothing. Or blind people seeing. I mean, you can't just throw that out any longer.
How long do you think you need to put the proof together to where now everybody can look at it and say, this is true?
I don't know. I mean, we have so much documentation. Bond University out of the Gold Coast in Australia, they've just analyzed thousands of my brain scans, and they want to write a paper there because they're seeing, like they've never seen a community of people be able to change their brain waves so quickly and to sustain those kind of changes. So, we're measuring those type of changes both scientifically, and we're doing extensive questionnaires to be able to get information. Well, our latest results from, I think it was our last event in Portland, our week-long event, 80% of the people had some type of change in their health, mild, moderate, or complete and significant. And the complete and significant now is up above 30%, which is not a bad statistic. So we're always trying to retell the story. The cool part about it is we're getting a lot of referrals now from physicians all over the world. I mean, people come, my oncologist told me to come. My oncologist told me to come.
Is that weird for you?
Oh, it's so weird
when
for me.
mainstream doctors are referring people to you?
Yeah.
So I had one of my students in the academy, London Real Academy, and I had her in that chair after the course. She took my Business Accelerator course. And she was suffering from depression. Her daughter committed suicide. She was drinking a lot. And her doctor told her to watch your show on London Real. And that changed her life. It was crazy. She lives in Holland. And her doctor said, you should watch Joe Dispenza on London Real. And she did it, and she changed everything.
Well, I mean, that's why I do this. I mean, I do it for that exact reason. If you know, it's a challenge to do this and to interface with so many cultures and to run a company and do all these different things. And one of my greatest moments of my day is when I get the story, when a team leader sends me a testimony from somebody, and a person was depressed and suicidal and really ready to end their life, and all of a sudden they're a completely different person. They are completely different, or they're very sick and all of a sudden they're healthy, or they get the most amazing job opportunity and they're, you can see the authenticity as a result of that. Now, why is that so significant? Not only is it significant for the people who are watching and observing it, but that person now, the feeling of that experience causes them to understand that the very feeling of their experience that they're having from a real life event, the emotion, the end product of that experience, that is an unbelievable humility and joy and gratitude and love for life and love for people. It's going to be easier for them to create that emotion for their next creation. And all of a sudden, the next creation is going to create even a greater emotion, even more love, and then here we go. They're going to be able to create even better because they're able to live in that emotional state a little bit longer. So we see then that people all of a sudden, as they begin to make these very significant changes, the side effect of all those changes is that they want less. Why? Because imagine there's so much coherence in your brain, so much wholeness in your brain, so much coherence in your heart, so much wholeness in your heart. You feel so whole that you no longer want anything, because how could you want when you're whole? You only want when you're in lack. And now when you're creating from wholeness instead of separation or duality, wow, the effect of that is that you only want to contribute to the world now. You only want to make a difference. You feel like your needs are met. You feel like there's not a whole lot of things that you want, that you feel so amazing. The only thing you want to do is give. You want to contribute, you want to make a difference. Now, we're back to the consciousness of how human beings are when they're a living organism, a species that are evolving as one organism, that is educated, that's informed, that's healing one another, that's shining for one another so others could shine, not to outshine them, but to show them how to shine. Now, all of a sudden, you have something very collaborative, something very unique happening. And that's my hope during these times.
Which is kind of the opposite of this kind of tribalism we see where it's about what can I get, what do I look like, what does my post look like. The opposite of that is a wholeness, which means we're giving back to this oneness of the species.
Well, think about this. That's absolutely the right answer. Imagine understanding the science of creation. Now, as I said, it takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of information. We don't go for the whole enchilada. We teach people methodically, step by step, on how to build. On every day, they build a little bit more, they build a little bit more, they get a little bit better. Imagine that you do that to such a degree that you understand how to do it all the time. Now, you're not going to sit down to do the work and be like, oh God, I got to go create now. You're going to be pretty inspired to create. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to be something that you look forward to. And that's kind of the thing that I'm proud of when it comes to our community, because we're doers. And people do the work every day because they want the magic to be sustained. They want it to continue. And so it's no longer an obligation. It's no longer a need to do it to please God, to do the right thing, to be good, whatever people do it for. This is because they want to keep that kind of crazy world happening. And if you're in the belief system unconsciously that you're a body, local in space and time and three-dimensional reality, and you're trying to reach your goals and create your vision and do all this stuff, and you're a body, matter trying to change matter, then you have to drag your body through space every single day to get what you want, back and forth to work, whatever, and it's going to take you time to finally get your goals. That may take you a couple years. Well, that's because you have to think that I have to move my body to go get what I want, so then I got to compete. I got to force, I got to fight for it, I got to control it, I got to manipulate, I got to figure it out. Well, that's what you do with the limited resources when you're a body, local in space and time, trying to create something else, local in space and time. Well, if you're matter, trying to create matter, then you got to do stuff to make it happen.
And that's the way most of us were taught.
That's the way
brought up.
That's the way you get the skills, get all the different things. Well, now you got to lay down that very thing you used your whole life to get what you want, and relearn another way to do it. So then,
and by the way, reacting to emotions is part of laying that down.
Exactly.
Someone does something against me, I get angry,
right.
I yell at them, that's how I get ahead.
Yeah, so now you're back to matter trying to change matter. And so now you're in that three-dimensional world, and you can execute there, and we can work it out, but it's going to take time. Well, when you start realizing where you place your attention is where you place your energy, and the stronger the emotion you feel when you get angry, the more you're going to pay attention to that person. You're giving your power to that person. You're giving your life force to that person because that's where your attention is. Well, when you learn how to lower the volume to that emotion, you take your attention off that person. You begin to break your energetic bond with that person. You call energy back to you. Now you have energy to heal. You're building your own electromagnetic field. Now, when you understand the science of creation, and you understand it happens in the generous present moment, and you're practicing every single day on how to be present. You're not going to start creating until you know that you're beyond yourself and you're creating in the present moment. You know when you're there and when you're not. And you're creating by changing your energy. And you understand when there's a vibrational match between your energy and some potential in the quantum field, you no longer have to go anywhere to get it. You are the magnet. You're drawing the experience. You're collapsing time and space, or experiences are coming to you. You understand the science behind that. I guarantee you that you won't be rushing and competing to get anywhere. Everybody else will be rushing and competing. You'll be doing just the opposite. You'll just be in the present moment, changing your energy, understanding that there's a better way to do it. Now, this is where it gets
and things
exciting.
Will come to me.
Yeah,
well.
And all of a sudden you start figuring that out. So in traffic, you have two options. You can get frustrated or impatient, or you could be like, well, it was a good time to tune into my future. I'm going to do it with my eyes open. I'm going to fall in love with my future. I'm going to open my heart. And the side effect of that is starting to see those changes. Every day you're drawing a little closer. Now here's the cool part. We hear stories like this. We have coherence healing groups. We have people that understand that if you can begin to change the patterns in the field, you can change matter. It's not matter that emits the field. It's the field that creates matter. If you change the field, you change matter. You don't change the tumor. You change the pattern in the field, and the hologram of the tumor changes. So we go an extensive understanding on this. And now we're doing these coherence healings, and we're seeing people have instantaneous changes in their health. I mean, instantaneous. And so now this group of people say, well, God, if I'm truly in the quantum field, there's no separation. I don't actually have to have the person in front of me that we're healing. I just need a picture or a coordinate, and my thought will connect me to them because there's no separation. I'm connected to everything in the unified field. The unified field, the invisible field of energy that connects everything material. If I get there, then I don't need to be in the presence of that person. So we have hundreds of people doing these coherence groups, these co-heal groups. And here's a lady that They do them at breakfast and lunch. They call them the Hallelujah Amens. And if there's a child that has leukemia or Hodgkin's, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, if there's someone who has a serious health condition, they work with 3 songs at breakfast. They do 1 person per song, so they do 3 people in the morning, and then they do 3 people at lunch. Well, lady's driving down the road, and she realizes it's time for the co-heal session. She pulls over on the side of the road in a neighborhood. She turns her music up. She gets right into it. Next thing you know, she gets a knock on the window, and it's a police officer. And the police officer asks her to roll the window down and says, what are you doing? You know, we're getting calls from the neighbors. They think, are you sick? Is something wrong? Is it an emergency? And more importantly, they're wondering, there's children around here, if you're safe. And she said, no. We do this coherence healing thing, and I was just tuning in to the people, and she's got the music blasting. And he leans over to look into the car, and when he leans over, he jumps back. And he looks at her, and he said, what just happened? She said, what do you mean? He said, the pain in my back just went away. He goes, I was in a lot of pain. I don't have any pain at all. And she said, oh, you were healed into wholeness with love. And she gave him the wink and rolled the window up and took off. Now that's the side effect of what could happen in a change of energy. He had direct experience of it. She did nothing. He just entered a coherent field. So you start seeing these unusual things happening.
And you see it all the time. Yeah.
That they're becoming the new normal and having an effect. Like, that's how powerful you are. That's how powerful that lady is. She can't wipe the smile off her face, and the police officer's walking around going, oh, you're not going to believe this. You know.
And most people wouldn't believe it because it's not in their reality.
Right. But now, but that's the point.
That's changing.
What's happening? Footprint in consciousness. Somebody heals from a health condition, MS, lays a footprint. Someone heals from a rare genetic disorder, footprint. Someone heals from a brain tumor, footprint. Someone heals from Graves' disease, footprint. Someone heals from Hashimoto's syndrome, footprint. Now you have these footprints in consciousness that are literally patterns in the field that are more readily available that people can access. At the same time, you have that 3-dimensional experience of the evidence sitting right in front of you. You see it right in front of you. That person's scans show that they're completely better. Now you have evidence in 3-dimensional reality. You have evidence in the field. There's a footprint there people can step into. Now, what happens is it becomes that collective 4-minute mile thing. Like, we're broken through the 4-minute mile. Now everybody's starting to do it. There's a change in consciousness. That's becoming what's making it so exciting, that people want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of that community.
I want to see this documentary, Joe.
Right? Well, they're working on it.
Imagine, right? Imagine.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.